Andrew, I am so excited about our guest today. This is going to be an absolute blast. Are you excited, sir?
I'm stoked. I've been watching this guy for a little bit here, and very very excited to meet him and to interview him. It's going to be a great time.
You know, I feel like this intro could be almost a podcast length in and of itself because there's so many different pieces, so many different facets to actually introduce this person. My dad always told me growing up, he said, some people, they say they've done something for 30 years, but really what they did is they did one thing 30 years in a row. They lived 1 year just 30 times back to back to back. This person literally has lived several different lives, lots of different lifetimes inside of their window. This is a fitness influencer turned into a cookie entrepreneur, turned into an awesome dad, just a wide range of things. And I'm so excited to introduce Mr. Brad Bromlow.
Yeah.
Welcome, sir.
Hey, that was a great intro. I'm pumped up right now.
Man, we were so excited, man. Like when Andrew told me that he got to talk to you and that you were coming on the show, I'm like, oh man, I've actually known Brad. I started following you, I think, in like 2016. You guys were in Houston, 2015, 2016. So
yeah.
I've seen you for a while, so I was super excited to get you on the show, man.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like our fitness journey onto social media just took a really natural progression moving to Houston because it's such a huge fitness hub, you know. We met a lot of people in the fitness world there. But yeah, we started our YouTube and all that stuff in May of 2016. And you know, it really took off for Aubrey especially, but I always say like it's a trickle down effect. I gained momentum as she gained momentum. So
Trickle down economics inside the social media world.
Yep, exactly.
That's it.
That's so cool, dude. And you guys, you know, you like some people like think and strategize. I'm not saying you guys don't think or strategize, but you guys also just jump. Like you guys met on Tinder. You know, we're dating for a very short period of time, and then you're like, hey, let's just do this thing. Let's make the jump. Let's move to Houston. Like you guys were in Seattle, very far from where you're currently at. For those that don't know your story, kind of give us like a 30,000 foot, because I'd like to get into some of the business stuff, but I feel like you almost need to know who you are before you can get to the business stuff. There's some foundational context here.
Yeah, so I got my electrical engineering degree from the University of Florida, and then I commissioned into the military, the Navy, and I had to go through a lot of training because I was doing nuclear power on submarines. So I lived in Charleston, South Carolina for a little bit, went through dive school back in Panama City, and then I ended up being stationed outside of Seattle on the USS Ohio. And it was my last, literally, I think, 3 months that I was up there that Aubrey and I met on Tinder. And at that time, I was kind of going through the searching of like, what do I want to do once I get out of the military? Because I decided that I wanted to like have a family life. I liked working out, and submarine life is not conducive with either of those things. So, you know, I had taken my GMAT, had gotten accepted into University of Washington and University of Florida for the MBA programs. And then I went to some career fairs that were military oriented and interviewed a lot of places. And I just got a job offer.
Did you grow up in Florida then?
Yeah, I grew up in Panama City, Florida.
Okay, so that's like home base for you then.
Yep, back home for me,
Okay.
yeah. And then Aubrey grew up in Montana. She was in Seattle because her brother was at dental school at University of Washington, and her sister was a nurse, a traveling nurse, was just in Seattle. So she wanted to move to a big city because she's from a small town in Montana. And so she was there as a speech language pathologist for her first year after college, like kind of like an externship type situation. You have to do a certain amount of hours before you can go off on your own.
Yeah.
And so, we met there, and I guess you could say we really hit it off. Like within a week of meeting, she told me she loved me, and we pretty much were like inseparable. But that was May 25th of 2015 is when she told me that she loved me. And by August 3rd, we closed on the house and I moved in, and August 17th, she moved in to Houston. Like I said, I just got a job offer that was like too good to turn down. It was like, I didn't want to be a poor college student. I'll take this opportunity to make really good money in the oil and gas industry in Houston. So
it's a good spot to be in oil and gas. That's for sure.
That's right. And so, so she moved with me right away. A lot of people didn't like that. They were like, her parents were like, what are you going to do if y'all break up? My parents are very conservative, so they didn't like that we weren't married and living together. But I told him, I was like, I know I'm going to marry her, so what does it matter if it's now or later? But our fitness journey on social media really started because people started asking us all these questions. Like, my wife is very fit as well. And they're like, hey, what do y'all eat? Like, what do you do for workouts and all this stuff? So that's kind of like how we started considering sharing it, but it didn't start until we went in February of 2016. Rob and Dana Lynn Bailey used to host these warehouse gym camps in Philadelphia or in PA, like Reading, PA, where they lived. And we went up there, and if anyone's not familiar with Rob and Dana, they own 𝗦𝗢𝗄𝗡𝗢 clothing company, and then Dana was the first ever women's physique Olympia winner.
Wow.
So she has like 2 million followers on Instagram. Rob has, I don't know, 400,000 or so, but they're, very entrenched into the fitness world. So we went up to this gym camp, and they actually pulled us aside and they're like, hey, you need to be on social media. Like, you need to be sharing. They're like, you guys have like what it takes. And so we got back home and started deciding that we were going to start sharing our lives on social media. And I remember Aubrey, and I just started sharing and going in. Like, back then you were like, I was searching hashtags for people that would ask like fitness questions and try to like answer people's questions and stuff.
Yeah.
The whole social media world was like completely different in 2016 than it is now. I mean, it's
totally
vastly different. And so, yeah, I mean, that's really how
you guys are both full-time in your job still. Is that correct? Like 2016, like you guys, I mean, you guys have pretty high paying careers. Like, these aren't, flipping burgers at McDonald's or something. Like, you're, you're doing well.
I was making six figures working for an oil and gas company as an engineer. And Aubrey was making really good money for a SLP that was only having to work 8 months out of the year because she was in the schools. So she literally had all summer off, 2 weeks for Christmas and then spring break and Thanksgiving that whole week. So she was making a lot more money than she was making in Seattle. I think about like 30% more money than she was making in Seattle, and was working only 8 months out of the year.
Wow.
So yeah, I mean, we had the American dream, if you will. We had a dog, we had the house, we had a really good income, but we just felt like there was like more to life than that. And, that's how we really started pushing on the social media side. And then obviously, the very, very tail end of our time in Houston, we launched 𝗦𝗢𝗢𝗡𝗢 and quit our corporate jobs. And everyone was like, you're crazy, leaving the American dream for, this unknown,
But it didn't start out as like, we're leaving for 𝗦𝗢𝗢𝗡𝗢, right? Like, you guys were leaving to be full-time social media.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. We're leaving for full-time social media. At that time, the income that we were making on social media was good enough that obviously you're going to feel it when you leave a six-figure job, like the pinch, but the amount of time that I could devote to social media, I knew would increase so much more. So I felt like it would be easy to eventually make that up. And then we launched 𝗦𝗢𝗢𝗡𝗢 as really just like this, hey, I think we're going to make some cookies like once a week, side job. It'll probably take us like a day or two to get this stuff out, and it'll be a pretty good income. And then it turned into the empire that it is now. So yeah,
I love it.
When you all kind of jumped into it, did you have any thoughts about doing social media before your friends had like brought it up? Were you guys thinking about it, planning on it? Did you guys ever even post on social media, or was this kind of like out of the blue, never even thought about it?
Yeah, I mean, I had posted on Instagram. I remember like, this is going to tell you how long ago social media was. Bradley Martin had 10,000 followers on Instagram when I started following him. And he actually like reposted one of my posts one time. And I gained like a bunch of followers. And at the time when Aubrey and I met and stuff, I had like 3,000, which she was like, oh my gosh, you have a lot of followers.
You're
right?
an influencer.
Like most people had like 500 or something. It was like mainly friends and family and stuff like that.
Right.
And that's kind of the boat that Aubrey was in. She was a lot more leery of like jumping into the social media world. I had seen like what it had done for some people. But that whole social media ecosystem was kind of fresh. Like, no one really knew like what the lifespan of a social media influencer was.
Right.
What do you do when you're no longer
where's the money of this, this aspect?
And what do you do when you're no longer influencing and stuff, So yeah, Aubrey wasn't actually, it actually took a lot of convincing to get Aubrey to do it. But she obviously is way more successful at it than I am. So.
That's funny. The roles reversed.
Yeah.
That's funny.
For sure. Well, I remember
she's done quite well.
Yeah. She posted a swipe through workout And for people that aren't familiar with this, they were really big on Instagram for a while when they released videos, and you would just record your entire workout, each exercise, and you would just have you could just like swipe through and see it. And the very first time she posted a swipe through workout, I think she went from like 20-ish thousand followers to like 40,000 followers in a matter of a couple days. Yeah, it was crazy.
From one post.
Yeah, from one post. And so
wow,
that's when she was like, oh, I guess I needed to post more swipe through. And she was very, very early on to do swipe through workouts. Like she was like one of the first people sharing them. And so I think that's a lot of her growth is attributed to just like sharing those workouts in the beginning, you know, and then now it's like a lot more mom life, how to maintain your physique with the only 30 minutes you get in a day sometimes to work out and stuff like that. So
that's good stuff. Those are important questions. I think a lot of moms have those questions, obviously.
Yeah, for sure.
That's
yeah.
incredible.
And so she shares like some home workouts, like things you can do at home. You know, you don't need to go to the gym necessarily. Obviously it's beneficial to go to the gym, but like sometimes you got to make do with what you got. So
yeah. Well, dude, I'm so excited about that. And then when did you guys start Memories Over Macros? Like I know that's kind of more like, I know you guys both started it, but that's kind of more her project. Is that correct? Like from my understanding, just as like an outside viewer, that seems more like it's her all in hands-on thing.
Yeah, I mean, this is, I guess, a roundabout story, but we started a company called Determine Your Worth because we'd always say like you're worth it at the end of our YouTube videos, and then like when it came to like coaching, it was like this kind of things like, you know, you got to decide if this is worth it to you. You know, I think an investment in yourself is always worth it. So then when Aubrey started doing more of the coaching because I was so busy with like admin work with Fat and Weird and some of the other stuff that we were doing, she kind of coined the phrase Memories Over Macros because macro tracking became like really big. We actually had the trademark for Memories Over Macros.
Wow.
Nice.
So it's pretty, you know, crazy because she was just, you know, like I said, early to that game. And so she kind of made the online coaching more of her brand and turned it into Memories Over Macros. So I would say probably, man, 2018, like when I started doing Fat and Weird stuff, she took over the coaching side of things.
Okay.
That's great.
Go ahead, Andrew.
I was curious about like, you know, tracking macros, like the fitness and everything. You guys are very much into health and fitness and everything, but you also love dessert. Like with Fat and Weird, how did you come up with the name Fat and Weird, and why cookies? Why not like protein shakes or like health food? Why cookies and why Fat and Weird? Where did that all come from?
Well, so the cookie side of things is like cookies and ice cream are my favorite dessert. I'm hard pressed to find anything better than like a hot cookie and ice cream.
That's right. And a skillet. That's right. Hot cookie and a skillet with ice cream on top. Oh,
yeah.
So good.
Yeah. So for my birthday in April of 2018, Aubrey had people send cookies to our P.O. box in Houston. And we had, I mean, thousands of cookies sent to our P.O. box. And, you know, a lot of them were, you know, flavors that were, you know, run of the mill, your chocolate chip, stuff like that. Some of them were a little bit more creative, but nothing like, you know, what Fat and Weird is now. And I said, man, I'd love to execute some of these like famous bakery style cookies that you see in like New York, but like a lot more fun flavors. And that's really where the idea for Fat and Weird cookie came about. But I think it was a natural progression for us because every time we went to like fitness expos, like if you go, there's some old YouTube videos of us like going to the Dallas Fitness Expo. And we also went to like 8 different dessert spots in that like 2 to 3 day period that we were there. Like we had planned it out. We were like, we're going to this place,
nice.
we're going to this place, we're going to this place. And we filmed the whole thing. So I think that naturally people just knew that like Aubrey and I ate healthy in general, but like we weren't going to skip out on dessert. Like we were always going to have dessert. And that's kind of why I feel like the cookies are just like a natural fit for us. But yeah, I mean, it's just because I loved cookies. I knew they're a product that you could ship and stuff like that. And then all
you
our
like
friends,
donuts more, is that right? Like that was like
Aubrey
donuts.
loves donuts.
Aubrey loves donuts. Okay,
yeah, Aubrey's
she's the donut lady.
Yeah, the donut queen. That's why the Aubrey Dokie, which is that one, the pink one in the middle, that one's made with donuts. So we own the trademark for Dokie as well, and it's like donut cookie. Yeah, so they all have donuts in the cookies. Those do. But yeah, so that's really how it started. We just like, you know, we can ship donuts or we can ship cookies, donuts. It would be hard. They would go stale. And that's kind of really how that started. And as far as like not going down like the fitness route, we just had so many friends that were already doing it. We had friends that had supplement companies. We had friends that had clothing companies. We had friends that had all these different companies. And I was like, this is not going to step on anyone's toes. And they're going to want to support me. So like that was kind of like a natural thing for us. Like, hey, we'll just send out cookies to our friends and go from there.
Kind of a blue ocean in this sense, because it's, you know, it's not like a fitness influencer that started a cookie company. Like, it seems very almost oxymoronic, but then the way that you guys do it, it's very fun. And I think that's a vein throughout all of your content, is you guys have a lot of fun. It seems like fun's a focus for you guys inside of your
it's kind of like
content.
Max and his sour strips too, right? Like you know, another fitness influencer starting a candy company, you know, it's just, but people knew Max loved sour candy, so you know, it just kind of fit the brand. And then the name Fat and Weird, believe it or not, came about because when we went on cruises, we would used to joke like it's time to get fat and weird when we would go to the buffets. And we were sitting there, I mean, we were thinking, I mean, I remember vividly, Aubrey and I were like laying out at the pool, and we were like just bouncing name ideas off of each other. And I was like, what about Fat and Weird Cookie? You know, because I was like, we always say like, let's get fat and weird. And she's like, dang it, that's a good name. And I was like, all right. So she's like, I hate that you always come up with the good names, but so yeah.
You seem to have a knack for it. You name a lot of the cookies, is that right?
I
A lot
do.
of the cookies come from the Brad brain. So if someone's looking at this and they're like, where did they come up with that? This is the creator of the names typically.
Yeah, and the funny thing about the cookie names is I have like a process. Like I don't want to name them just whatever the flavor is. I try to like take it like one step off, and I'll explain this, and you might be like, Brad, I don't understand your brain at all, or you might understand it. But for example, we have like a banana pudding cookie, and so when I think of a banana, I think of like banana peel, and then people slip on banana peels, so we called it Don't Slip, and that's the name of the banana cookie.
Nice.
Our chocolate lava cake cookie is called Massive Eruption, and I was like, lava cake. When I think of lava, I think of a volcano, and then volcano, massive eruption. So that's kind of, and then obviously if we can put a sexual innuendo in there, then we're going to put it in there. So,
you got to slip it in when you can.
Yeah.
That's funny. So you came up with a name on the cruise. You guys, like Colton had said, you guys seem to have a lot of fun throughout life with business, with family, with the cookies and everything. You guys take a lot of cruise. Why do you guys do cruises over like maybe other vacations? You guys seem to have like a thing for cruises. What's the big craze over the cruise?
Yeah. So, you know, truthfully growing up, my parents were, they didn't have a lot of disposable income growing up. And so I remember our first vacations would be like driving down to get on these like 3 and 4 day cruises. And they would, you know, it would be me and my 2 sisters and my parents just like shoved into like one room. I remember how cramped it used to feel, but I just knew that was like a cheap vacation that they could do with us. And then as their business started doing better and they started making more money, I realized the luxury end of the cruising, because instead of staying in this like tiny interior room, there's these like massive owner suites and like these huge balcony rooms, stuff like that. And so, you know, as I got older, we started taking a few of those cruises here and there. And then I've just kind of like built up loyalty and status on the cruise line. So obviously there's like a lot of perks there. I like that you don't have to fly. We can drive to Port Canaveral. We can drive to a lot of these places. So if you go to an all-inclusive in Cancun, flying out of Panama City is like you fly to Atlanta, then you go down to Cancun, or you fly to Dallas or Houston, and then you fly down to Cancun. And I feel like a lot of times your first whole day is like just traveling, whereas you know, it's about a 5.5 hour drive down to Orlando. So it's like you could technically wake up. We have woken up the morning of the trip, you know, and just like drove down there, got on the cruise ship. So that's one aspect of it. Another aspect is like, imagine you went to a resort and half the time that you were at the resort, everyone just left. And you had the whole resort to yourself. Well, that's what it's like on a cruise, because you pull into a cruise terminal and we have beautiful beaches here in Panama City. So I'm like not pressed to go hang out on a beach somewhere. But then you have the entire cruise ship to yourself. Like Aubrey and I will go ride the slides like nonstop. And then we'll go like, you know, just do all the fun stuff that you would normally, there'd be like a huge wait at, you know, you essentially have the pools almost to yourself. You know, it's really nice whenever
it's the super move. That's great.
Yeah, it's a super move.
Yeah.
Now let's go back to like 2018 there. So you guys were going full time on social media. You started Fat and Weird Cookie, and it started really taking off. And from my understanding, is it your aunt that was helping you guys with some of the formulas at that point? You're the name guy, but she was the formula culinary lady. Is that right?
Yeah. So she just used to do like catering on the side, and everyone knew her for her desserts. I mean, she makes some like phenomenal cakes and things like that. And so I think I had to really push her though on, like, sometimes we would do stuff and she's like, oh, that's not like classical cookie. And I'm like, we're not classical. Like, we're going like, she's like, you know, I was like telling her stuff goes into cookies and like things to put in cookies. She's like, people don't do this. And I'm like, we do this, you know? And I remember, I feel like I pushed her a lot on just like going outside the boundaries of like what the normal baking idea was. And so, yeah, she did that. She was, you know, helping me out from August all the way until about February. She looked at me and she's like, hey, Brad, you really need to hire full-time people. Like, this is, you know, we're capped out at what we can do. And I was like, would you want to like quit your job and come, you know, work, you know, like for the cookie company, you know? And I think, you know, I don't hold it against her, but I think she was like uncertain of what the future would hold, you know? And obviously like being older, I don't think as you get older in life, it's harder to take those risks just because there's a lot more on the line. You know, I remember like after we had Scarlett, I felt just so much more pressure for everything, because I'm like, it's not just me and Aubrey anymore. Aubrey tells me like, oh, I love you, I'd live in a cardboard box with you, but I'm like, I'm not gonna, like, we can handle some situations, but now with a kid, like, I don't want to have to like them to ever be in a situation that we're, you know, literally like living in a 1-bedroom place because we can't, you know, get on our feet. But so she kind of like was like, no, I'll keep helping until you find someone to replace me. And so luckily I found a couple people and
also, in her defense here, from my understanding, like it was growing like exponentially fast, and it started out like, hey, we'll do Saturdays, and then it became like, okay, but I got to get a jump start on Fridays, and then it became like Friday from like 3 p.m. after she got off work until like 6 a.m. the next morning baking cookies.
She hated doing Saturdays, like making the cookies, because she's like, I feel like I only have one day off on Sunday. So she's like, I'm just going to start doing it on Friday afternoons after work at 3 o'clock. I was going to start. And at first it was like from 3 to like 8 p.m. and she'd be done. And then it turned into like 3 to midnight and then she'd be done. And then it'd be like 3 to like 4 a.m. and she'd be done. And I mean, literally got to a point where they were like there from like 3 to 6, 7 a.m. And I was like, and you know, and then I would go help in the kitchen, and then I would go home and sleep for a couple hours. Like usually I try to get into bed by like midnight, and then she'd be calling me at like 3, 4, like, hey, the cookies are ready for you to come pick up. I would go in a van and pick up all the cookies and bring them to my parents' warehouse. And then we would literally, me, Aubrey, and then we'd have friends that were like, yeah, we'll come help you for, you know, however much money or for free cookies or whatever. And we would just box cookies for 4 or 5 hours straight. And then, you know, we'd have a little USPS truck with like backup, and we'd like load everything on there. And then it got to the point where we were having pallets and things like that after we went full time. Yeah. I mean, our first few weeks, it was like 300 cookies we'd sell per week. And then it was like 600 cookies. And then it was like 1,000 cookies. And then it got to the point where it wasn't just 1,000 cookies over the week. It was like 1,000 cookies in an hour.
Wow.
And it was like 1,000 cookies in like 3 minutes. And then got to the point where it would just sell out so fast.
What was doing that? Was it just your social media following, or did you have friends that were promoting it? Were you running ads? What was doing it?
Yeah, we never ran an ad until probably like 2021.
Wow.
So for the first 3 years of the company, it was all organic marketing. I think a little bit of it was like friends sharing and stuff, but the truth is like, you know, Aubrey created the Instagram and TikTok accounts, and I mean, she's good at social media. And, you know, I vividly remember we have a TikTok video that was back in 2020 that has 1 million likes.
Wow.
And it, you know, it's put it in perspective. It only has 4.5 million views, but it has 1 million likes.
Wow, that's a good conversion. That's a good rate.
Right. If you were to take that video nowadays and get 1 million likes on a video, it'd have like 40 million views or something like that. Right. But that just showed you how like engaged those people were with us. And so during COVID, we would sell 12,000 cookies in under 5 minutes. We would, I would literally be on Shopify looking at the website, and it would say there were 6,000 people waiting before the drop hit. And I knew that we could only ship like 2,000 orders. So when the drop would hit, like we would literally, I knew I was about to get a bunch of emails of really upset people. I mean, we got emails all the time like, this is a scam. You guys need to make more cookies. And I'm like, if you only knew like how many cookies we were really
up
putting
to our
out.
eyeballs in cookies right now.
And at that time we had gotten, I wouldn't say kicked out of the cookie kitchen that we originally were in, but the owner had essentially told us, hey, you guys are in here so much that like some of these other small companies don't have a chance to like operate in here because you're reserving it so much.
Wow.
So
you're like a shared kitchen at that point. You're not even in your own space yet.
Yeah,
wow.
we started out in a shared kitchen. So in 2000 and like late 2019, I think it was like July of 2019 maybe, we rented literally a 960 square foot kitchen.
Wow.
And we were producing 12,000 cookies a week out of that kitchen.
Oh my gosh.
It was crazy. It was wild.
Because then it turned into like you guys have like a 10,000 square foot venue,
right, and then and then we were building this building. We got into this building in January of 2021. So we were in that building for like a year and a half is about what we were in there. And then obviously getting into this one, I thought this facility is so big, there's no way we're ever going to run out of room here. And I just had to get a development order approved by the city for a 14,000 square foot expansion. So we're adding another 14,000 square feet to this building.
That's incredible.
That's amazing. Yeah. I love it. And I love that you put it back into the business. I've heard the podcast you were on and you were talking about, like there's money coming in, and some people like they increase their lifestyle. They go buy, they're like, hey, I have 100,000 in the account. I can buy a Ferrari for 100,000. Like they whatever comes in, that's how much they have to spend that week. You were like strategic with this. You're like, hey, I'm gonna put this back into the business. I'm gonna put this back into the business, and you were able to build a bigger facility. You were able to, you guys built your house on top of the facility. I think that's a cool piece there. But you guys did all this stuff, and it was almost like building an ark before it rained. Like some people like start sprinkling, and they're like, oh, I should probably start building a boat now. You guys were like prior to that, and then as struggles came, like it wasn't just all good to glory to glory to glory. Like there were struggles that came inside of that.
Yeah. So that's something that I really, really want. I love touching on this topic because all of 2023, Fat and Weird was in the red. And I know that like people are like, oh, well, how much? Well, with a company our size, like there were some months that we would $50,000 in the red just that month. Some months weren't as bad, but in general, 100. I'm sorry, did I lag out for a little bit?
Just a second there. Yep.
Yeah, it's super bad weather here right now.
Oh no!
But any in 2023, it doesn't matter. Somehow, however you do the books, we were anywhere from $100,000 to $300,000 like in the red. And so Aubrey and I were actually like dumping personal savings back into the company, like money that we make because we kind of live on social media money, but we were taking that social media money and like pushing it back into the company while we were pivoting towards wholesale. Yeah, I mean, there's just like that time frame. There's just so much. Someone offered us money for our company. We took the offer, and then like 3 days out, that offer fell through. There's like all kinds of layers to this stuff. But I knew that I could quit. We had this huge building, and I could figure out something else to do with it, rent it out. There's tons of medical facilities around us. Could have turned it into medical offices or whatever. But I was like, I think that, if we pivot Fat and Weird into wholesale, that we'll be fine. I think that the real issue people have is just like buying cookies and waiting for them to ship and then getting them. A lot of times with food, you're like, I want this now, right? You're like,
when there's a surplus when people have surpluses of income, like there's certain things they're going to buy. Like, hey, like there's luxury items, on the food pyramid, but of expenses, luxuries are at the top. On that pyramid as well, and one of the first things that's going to go is probably the extra, really nice cookies. And so as things get tighter, that probably gets harder for them.
Yeah, and we like if I showed you like our income, you would see like visually May of 2022. It just like literally just like you see this downturn, and it's like pretty drastic. Like we had pretty average on like this level months, and like May of 2022, it was like dropped in half. And then it was just like this slow slide from that point on. But yeah, I mean, I was fortunate enough. God put a lot of people in place in my lives. I could talk about God's work in our company from day one. Just, my aunt wanting to help me. The first hire I ever had was a guy that that I went to high school with, but I saw on Facebook he put his dream job was to own his own bakery. So I reached out to him, and that's he was my first hire ever. You know, the land that we got a really great deal on it, and you know, building this facility, everything. There's just like God's hands are just so much at work, and I feel like in everything that I've done. But I went on Max's podcast, his 𝗧𝗢𝗓𝗏 podcast, talking about the deal that someone was buying Fat and Weird, and they were going to go into wholesale. Well, because of that, someone reached out to me, and they're like, "Hey, I'm the vice president of sales for my company, but we're selling, and I'm looking for another spot. Like, are you guys hiring for, you know, the wholesale route?" And when the deal fell through, I actually reached out to him. I was like, "Yeah, I'm interested, but it's going to be me, not this other company, you know." And I brought him on, and you know, he's brought on some really great accounts. Myers in Ohio and Michigan, like we're in Myers locations. We're supposed to be in every single one, but I heard that they're like having to like move other products out of the way to get us on the shelves. So like trying to sell through it. Okay. So there are Myers locations that have Fat and Weird cookies, and eventually all of them will have it. Yeah. And then obviously DoorDash is like where we're doing really well. We have virtual storefronts all across the U.S. We ship out anywhere from like 30 to 40,000 cookies a week.
Wow.
Wow.
That was a good move.
Yeah. But January of 2024 was like our first profitable month in like, I want to say probably like 16, 17 months.
I love that.
It was a storm that we had to weather. You know, you only lose if you quit.
Yeah, that's right.
You kind of like never give up. And as long as you believe in it, I think that there's times you look at something, you're like, I don't think I can turn this ship around. Like it's better to jump ship. But I was like, I think that we can turn this around. I think it's not a problem with the cookies. It's a problem with accessibility. Yeah. And once we increase the accessibility, we were right. I mean, DoorDash literally says they can't like keep them in stock sometimes. So
I love it.
Great.
Talk about betting on yourself, because there's like several different instances. It seems like when there's, you got the cards in your hand and there's the chips on the table and everything else, and there's times where you could bow out. There's times where you could not take the risk. It seems like you put the chips in on yourself. You're like, hey, I think I'm going to be able to make this. I think I'm going to be able to make this work. Even your language just a second ago, where you're like, if it falls apart, I could do this. If this, you're willing to pivot. You're willing to bet on, if everything else goes away, I could do this. Talk about betting on yourself. Like, especially in the role of like you mentioned earlier, you're a dad now. Like, there's certain, I can't hit zero. Like as a dad, like I can't just like I can take risks, but I can't hit zero. I got 3 kids of my own here. Like I love taking risks. I love betting on myself, but I can't hit zero. But there's a tension inside of that of also, I have to take risks as an entrepreneur and as a man. I think that's an important piece.
Yeah, I think some things that have always stuck with me is like, no one's coming to save you, right? It's on you. And then 2, just the whole idea of extreme ownership. If I give anyone else the ability to dictate like how I'm doing things, then I've lost ownership of those things. Like, it's one of the most frustrating things when when something goes wrong and someone's like, well, so-and-so did this or da da da, and they like point it everywhere. It's like, you can't fix those issues, right? Whenever you go, yeah, I could have done this differently and it would have yielded a different result, then you take ownership of that, and then you can actually change the outcome of things. And I think a lot of people just don't like taking ownership of things because they feel like it's like a negative, like, oh, I messed up. And it's like, well, maybe you did, maybe you didn't. But if you can take ownership of the issue at hand, then you can fix it.
Yeah. Huge.
That's great. That's awesome. Yeah. You talk a lot about kind of working on the business and putting time into it and growing it. How do you find the time with all this going on? You've got all these different businesses going on right now. And we talk a lot about the F7 goals. We have a mutual mentor, Clay Clark, and he teaches these F7 goals: faith, family, finances, fitness, friendships, fun, and focus. So they're like these kind of 7 areas of life. And you really seem to be hitting a lot of them, if not all of them, like hitting them, really doing a good job at it. How do you find the time are you like running a super tight calendar, a schedule? How are you kind of balancing all of the F7s in your life?
Yeah, I think that I do. I mean, obviously I have a calendar, like keep up with things just because I would forget so much stuff if it wasn't on my calendar. Like, this podcast, we had scheduled it, I feel like a month ago. And then I like yesterday got a calendar notification because I'd set it up to like notify me a day before. And I was like, oh yeah, okay, I gotta get ready for this podcast,
That's right.
But the calendar helps. I also,
awesome.
anything that is a priority for me, I do in the morning, because once life happens, once there's miniature fires, like all these things that need my urgent attention throughout the day, I found that if I was trying to work out later in the day, I wouldn't be able to get to the gym and be present, because I'd be like, oh man, I need to call so-and-so. I need to do this, I need to do that. And so like, it would just be very distracting for me. So I get up now and I spend some time with my daughter. We'll make breakfast. We'll do all that stuff. But then I like head out the door by like 7:30, 8 o'clock to get to the gym. I know some people are like, well, I get to the gym at 5 a.m. Our daughter literally wakes up at like 6 a.m. every morning. So like, I'm not going to try to like beat her out. Like she's like,
there's beating the sunrise and then there's beating your daughter.
Yeah. Like she wakes up between like 5:30 and 6:30 every morning. I think like sleeping in at 6:30 for her, 5:30 is like kind of early, but in general by 6 o'clock, she's usually awake. So I always tell people, like, if I was going to race her out, like I'd be getting up at like 4 a.m. to like get out the door and try to race her out. So we just wake up with her. We, make breakfast, spend time with her. And then normally Aubrey will take her to like childcare at the gym, or we'll just hang around the house with her until she takes her to childcare at 9. She goes to a little preschool. So yeah, I think putting stuff earlier in the day for me definitely helps me get it done. And then just being intentional with my time. I think that a lot of people don't value their own time. And you can even take it to like our cookies. People are like, oh, those cookies are so expensive. I can make them myself at home. It only costs me, I don't know, $3.50 per cookie for the ingredients. I'm like, yeah, well, what about the 2 hours that it takes you to make them? Like, is your time literally worth nothing to you, And
they probably won't be as good. Let's be honest.
No way.
Well, we have access to ingredients that you can't buy, right? I mean, we buy from like distributors and places like, you'd be hard pressed. Like, for example, our s'mores cookie, we have like gram flour directly from Kellogg's and stuff. Like you can't buy it. Like you have to buy it in 25-pound like increments. Like you can't buy that, I
guess you could, but it'd be pretty expensive to make 4 cookies. Right.
Yeah. There's just like a lot of stuff. Oh, for example, the caramel that we use is actually only like a food distribution company. It's not in the grocery store, so you could never reproduce our caramel. So there's random stuff like that would be like really hard pressed for you to find some of the ingredients that we utilize. We order our Biscoff directly from Biscoff in like these huge tubs. He's like, I think they're like 4 or 5 pound tubs. They're like pails,
Wow.
I love it.
So there's just stuff like that would be very hard pressed for you to get that. Same thing with our flour. We order it by the pallet, and it's a special flour like made specifically for us. So again, you could reproduce our cookies as close as possible, but without being like a large company, you wouldn't be able to,
What I love about your Instagram too, of like there's a lot of stuff to follow here. Like I was thinking through today, I was like, call to actions. There's like 18 different places that people could probably go to today to connect with you guys. But definitely Fat and Weird Cookie is actually an Instagram that I would want to follow, even if I didn't eat the cookies, if I had nothing to do with it. Like it's I don't know who's in charge of your marketing on that, but you guys take this like, we're a corporate big company, multi-million-dollar 7-figure thing, to like, it's actually fun and personal and light and like it's engaging as somebody that like, even if I didn't order a cookie, it's still really fun to follow.
Yeah, I think a lot of that has been on just Aubrey and I's plates, because when you're trying to pivot and you are trying to conserve cash, you're like, what can I do, right? So we've just now gotten to the point where we're outsourcing a lot of that stuff. We actually hired a marketing team to start in June to do like video stuff for us, and then right now our personal videographer kind of does a lot of the video work for Fat and Weird. Like film like a couple reels a week for them. But we just hired another videographer for just Fat and Weird. So yeah, we got to the point now where we're, growing the team out, because we finally have like the cash flow to do those things. So
well, January 2024 was not that long ago.
That's right.
Yeah, it really wasn't. And I mean, in like that first month, like, yes, it was profitable, but it was like $4,000, but I mean, it's been like an exponential growth since then. So,
well, and there's drowning, and then there's alive. There's drowning, and there's alive. Right. So every $1,000, man, it's like, woof, we're back, baby.
Yeah, and April of this year was our best month ever, like in the history of the company.
Wow, that's great.
Yeah. So it's really good. Yeah,
awesome. I love that. Now let's go into the dadhood stuff. So I know you guys I know becoming a parent was a bit of a struggle for you guys. Like that wasn't just like an accidental thing. Like there was intentionality with that and focus with that. Talk about managing though that like, okay, I'm this entrepreneur, I'm the social media guy, and now I'm a dad. What was that like to make that third transition? Because people don't realize, like, they're like, oh, you're a CEO. That's not a part-time gig. Social media for most people is a part-time gig, but because they're just watching on social media. But if you're actively making content, that's a pretty full-time gig. And now you're a dad, which is a full-time gig. So you got like 3 full-time gigs, and there's only 168 hours in a week.
Yeah, I think that honestly, my wife did I don't know, a really great job of trying to like protect my sleep and peace in the beginning, because we were building. We were building the facility, we were building our home, like everything was like happening right when Scarlett was born, and like or the tail end of Aubrey's pregnancy, and then like right when Scarlett was born. And so I was getting pulled a million different directions. So Aubrey just did a really great job of just making sure that I could still work and do what I needed to do, because she was able to like stay home,
That's great.
And so and I'll tell this, I think a lot of dads probably feel the same way. I think the first, 3 to 6 months, like I didn't feel a huge connection to my child. Like obviously I loved my child. Like I felt this immense love the moment they were born, but I didn't feel any real like deep connection with them, because the truth is, like, I'm not producing milk. Like it's not sucking on my boob. And so like,
I feel
so
true.
Yeah.
I feel like
I'm in that situation right now.
especially if if your wife is like predominantly breastfeeding, and like Aubrey wasn't pumping that much because she was predominantly breastfeeding. So there was like not a lot of, I couldn't really feed Scarlett a bottle and things like that. I found that my role became helping Aubrey in the house. Like, so I started making more of the dinners. I started cleaning more stuff. I started doing laundry and things like that, just to like take that load off of her. And I think that's like different for every relationship. Some relationships, maybe the wife is not breastfeeding and she's pumping a lot, so that you can bottle feed and y'all can share the load differently. But I think the point is there's a certain amount of work that needs to get done. Right. And y'all got to figure out how to split up that work. And for that, just what worked for us is that I kind of took on more of like the household chores, more of the day-to-day stuff like that, so that she was freed up to just be a mom. And then obviously like Letty was a very early walker. She started walking at 9.5 months.
Wow.
Yeah.
Not only is
like,
she early to wake, she was also early to walk.
Yeah. And she was like climbing by a year old, like climbing up stuff. It was crazy.
Whoa.
Yeah. She's a daredevil. She's a pretty wild child.
What happens when both your parents are fitness influencers?
Yeah, I know, right? Yeah. I mean, yeah, we have this like jungle gym. Like I think we got it for like right around the time she turned 1 or so, maybe 1.5, and she like literally climb up this jungle gym, like go down the slide.
Wow,
like,
I love that.
Yeah. So yeah, she's always just been a little bit, very, very quick on motor skills. Like she was always really quick at that kind of stuff. And then obviously her speech is really good because Aubrey is a speech language pathologist. And I don't think Aubrey will tell you like, well, I didn't really do anything to help her out. But I think like subconsciously, it's like you already know.
Natural.
It's like if you started working out with someone that's never worked out before and you have your fitness backgrounds, you don't necessarily like need to be a trainer to them, but you can be like, oh no, don't do that, do this, and you're like, you're not training them, you're just working out with them, but you're just going to impart a lot more knowledge onto them. And I think the same thing with Aubrey. There's just skills and things that she's learned being an SLP that she was able to, bring to Scarlett. And now like, Scarlett just turned 3 at the end of March, and she's like talking in full sentences, like have a conversation with you. I joked I should start a podcast with her because she'll just talk and talk and talk. And it's like very clear. It's super easy to understand. So
I love it.
That's awesome, Brad. Brad, that's so good. It's been great to hear about your story, kind of the ups and downs and everything. I think we got into a lot here, but it's really surface level. We touched a lot on Instagram. You guys have a whole YouTube channel that you guys document your life, the story, the process, like everything that's gone on. I really dived into that before this interview, and you guys have a lot of really, really good stuff over there. And it's not just your story. You guys have great advice and tips and tricks and just business, life, family, all sorts of stuff.
You show the struggles. Like you're not just like glossing over and like showing the coolest stuff and like, hey, we've arrived at the mountaintop. Like you're like, hey, and this sucked, and like you kind of show all the different sides of it.
I love it.
I think YouTube is probably my favorite because there's just like it's almost like selfishly, I can go back and like watch, where we were 10 or I guess like 5, 6, 7 years ago, even, I can go back and like see, what we were doing, what we were eating, what we were, how Scarlett was right after she was born, So it's almost a selfish thing a little bit about the YouTube channel. It's like one of my favorite platforms, and why we keep up with it is because I want to be able to go back and get a snapshot of like what our life looks like. And we've never been in the world we are now where, a lot of times on social media, there's stuff I would love to share about my childhood, but there's no pictures, there's no video, there's nothing about that. Like, some people say they don't like their kids to be on social media because they haven't like given consent, or it's not their choice, or they don't know the repercussions of that. The way I look at it is that, like, hopefully Scarlett looks back and goes like, oh, this is really cool that I can see what it was like when I was 3 years old and I went to Montana and hung out with my cousins, or what it was like when I went on this cruise, or whatever it was, all these experiences that she's getting to do. So I think with all things, it's a double-edged sword, right? There's some negatives, but there's positives. And then you have to just make the decision that's best for you and your family, whether the negatives outweigh the positives or the positives outweigh the negatives. So
it's good.
Love it. Love it. Well, we really appreciate you coming on, Brad. Thank you so much. It's been a really, really fun time. Everyone can go to 𝗕𝗏𝗏𝗡𝗦𝗢𝗏.com. Also go follow them on Instagram. Go follow them on YouTube. There's a lot of great content out there, a lot of great places to follow. 𝗕𝗏𝗏𝗡𝗦𝗢𝗏 on Instagram, their personal Instagrams, fitness and everything. So there's a lot of great places out there to follow. A lot of inspiration, a lot of great advice, family parenting advice out there. So everyone should go follow, check them out. And Brad, we really want to say thank you for coming on the show. It's been a blast.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
To celebrate the new year, we're having the biggest sale ever on overstock clearance and brand new products. For example, save 60% on our Goose Down comforters, the best comforters ever. They go perfectly with our MyPillow bed sheets and duvet covers. Save 25% on our brand new kitchen towels. They're made with the same technology as our famous My Towels. Our initial quantities are extremely low, so get them now before they go. Our seasonal flannel sheets are finally in. You save up to 50%, and they sell out fast every year, so order now. They're truly the best flannel sheets you'll ever sleep on. Or save up to 80% on all our clearance items. And this is where it gets even better. For a limited time, your entire order ships absolutely free. So go to MyPillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use that promo code to get deep discounts on all MyPillow products. And for a limited time, your order ships absolutely free.